I am a massive fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have seen all 28 of the movies that have come out until now, and plan to go see all of the films set to release in the future. One of my favorite film topics to rant about is the MCU, and how I feel it's underappreciated by the film community. But please don't think of me as the guy who only defends Marvel movies. As much as I love the franchise, I'm still very critical of all their products. I recognize that there is a formula, and that many of them are just meant to turn a profit. But that's what makes films that break that formula so incredibly special. There's so much I can talk about the MCU that I will have to save for later, because that's not the topic of today's video. Today we have to discuss their competitor, the DC Extended Universe. From the beginning, the DCEU has been plagued with criticism, as their first lineup of movies was, to put it lightly, very bad. And not only are many of their films received poorly, they also face much criticism for just copying whatever Marvel does. But myself being the massive MCU fan I am, I decided to give the DCEU a chance and definitively rank all of the DCEU products. This includes 10 movies, the Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League, and the Peacemaker TV show. So I thought about which direction I should go with this list, and I think that would be much more interesting to start with the best movie and then move our way down to the worst. And with that being said, let's get into the list.
They call you Peacemaker.
I cherish peace with all my heart. I don't care how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it.
Wow, making a ranking and starting off with the best feels awfully weird. And it also feels weird that I'm not even putting a movie in the number one spot, because the single best DCEU product has to be Peacemaker. The show takes the one character from the Suicide Squad that didn't get any development and expands on their character to show what's really hiding under the Peacemaker facade that Christopher Smith puts on. Because I love Peacemaker so much, I really have to recommend that if you haven't seen it yet, you go watch the whole show before this video, or at least skip to this timestamp, because my words could not do this masterpiece justice. And all media is better if you go into it blind. Peacemaker takes an in-depth look at Christopher's childhood and explores how he grew up with an abusive, racist father who trained him to be the, quote, superhero he is today. It also explores Chris's trauma from accidentally killing his older brother when his father forced them to fight. This trauma led Chris to close himself off from anyone and to isolate himself because he fears that he will kill the next person he opens up to. Peacemaker is an emotional roller coaster about a deeply troubled man who tries to hide his emotional side to keep up the facade of being the tough guy. But throughout the show, we see this act start to wear Chris down, and he finally opens up to others and makes real friends for the first time since he lost his brother. And with overcoming his trauma, Chris is forced to confront his father about the years of abuse and pain. And when he finally overcomes the long-held desire to prove himself to his father, Chris fires one single bullet into his head. This single scene is more powerful and emotional than anything in the DCEU, and it almost brought me to tears the first time I saw it. I'll tell you, James Gunn will write the most intricate, character-driven stories, and he will never receive any awards because people rarely recognize superhero films for what they can be. There is a reason why some of my favorite movies of all time are Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, as well as The Suicide Squad and The Peacemaker show, all of which are directed by James Gunn. Oh, right, on that note, I should probably talk about The Suicide Squad now.
So that's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
I will never forget the first time that I saw The Suicide Squad in theaters with my friends. It was an absolute riot. All of us were laughing our asses off the entire time because The Suicide Squad is the funniest movie I have ever seen. And not only is this movie hilarious, but the character-driven story is also incredible. Every character is written with explored trauma and believable actions based off that trauma. For example, when Bloodsport was a child, his father would lock him in a box full of hungry rats for hours at a time. Ratcatcher 2 grew up homeless on the streets of Portugal with her heroin addict father. Polka Dot Man was experimented on by his mother to make him a superhero, and he watched all his siblings die in her failed experiments. And Nanawe has been alone his entire life. The only character that didn't have a story was Peacemaker, but this is easily made up for by his show that I just talked about. Every character in this film goes through their own arc, and watching characters like Bloodsport and Ratcatcher 2 change at the end of the film can get very emotional. Like, who could have guessed that I would start to tear up over the sight of millions of rats attacking a giant starfish? But I did! And the line from Ratcatcher 2's father,
Why rats, Papa?
Rats are the lowliest and most despised of all creatures, my love. They have purpose. So do we all.
and it's so incredible to me that James Gunn was able to take a story format that has proven itself to be very difficult to pull off and has made a beautiful movie out of it twice. After writing this video, I've finally come to the conclusion that James Gunn is easily my favorite director, and I cannot wait to see his future releases. The Suicide Squad has cemented itself as one of my favorite movies ever, and I'll be coming back to watch it every few months, just as I do with Guardians of the Galaxy. There is so much more that I want to say about this film, but unfortunately, I'm not very good at explaining why good movies are good. So I have to recommend that you check out some other videos that could do a much better job at praising this film than I ever could. Shazam was the first DCEU movie that I was really excited for, and for a good reason. The marketing was great, and the movie looked like it was going to be a breath of fresh air for the DCEU, as its tone was much less serious than all of the movies previously, and that's a change that was desperately needed. And to mine and everyone's surprise, Shazam was incredible. At the time, it was, in my opinion, easily the best movie the DCEU had put out. But what makes Shazam so good? Well, first is that the movie is incredibly fun. The idea of a 14-year-old boy who gets superpowers is a fresh concept that I feel was explored to its fullest potential through Billy and Freddy's relationship. Another aspect of this film that makes it so incredible is its message about family, and how you don't have to be blood related to someone for them to be your family. This message is explored when Billy's foster siblings help him find his real mother, and when he finally meets her after 10 years, he realizes that even though she is his mother, she isn't his family. His real family are those who went out of their way to try and make him happy by finding his mother in the first place. Over the course of the film, Billy learns the true nature of family, and the end of the movie where all the kids finally sit at the lunch table together with Freddy is very wholesome. But as much as I love Shazam, it isn't without its problems. The first is Eugene, the gamer kid. He feels like he was written by some old-ass boomer who doesn't understand internet culture, and all of his lines are just extremely cringy.
Look, I'm not a hacker, okay? But I have played Watch Dogs and Uplink, and maybe I did pick up a few skills.
I played Watch Dogs, so yeah, I'm a pro.
Watch Dogs.
He's the only one of the foster kids that I don't like, unlike Pedro, who is absolutely legendary. And as much as I love Mark Strong, Dr. Savannah is just a bad villain.
Sad. Sad. It's sad. How he became sad.
I'm a pretty big villain guy. A good villain makes a better story. Think Thanos, Loki, Zuko, the Joker, hell, even Gus Fring. It's for this reason why Dr. Savannah is so disappointing. I mean, his motivations are fine, but Mark Strong isn't adding any extra flair to his character that would make him stand out. He has absolutely zero personality. He's the definition of generic. But hey, at least it's not as bad as Wonder Woman's villain. Let's talk about that.
You don't sleep with women.
No, I mean, I do sleep with women. I sleep with... Yes, I do.
Wonder Woman was one of the only DCEU movies that I hadn't seen before this marathon, so I went into it not knowing how I was going to feel about it. And I have to say, holy shit, this was actually incredible. Until it isn't. And I'll get to that in a second. But I absolutely love how Diana is convinced it is Ares causing World War I, and she keeps bringing that up throughout the entire film. And Steve is too afraid to say anything because he knows she is wrong, but he doesn't want to hurt her. And this conflict between them is what drives them apart later in the film when Diana's desire to kill Ludendorff screws with Steve's plans and people in the village get killed. And when Diana finally kills Ludendorff, the people don't stop fighting, and we watch Diana struggle to come to terms with the fact that Ares isn't real and that humans are not perfect. Steve has an incredible speech about how humanity is naturally drawn to war, and in conflicts like this, it's not just one person influencing people to act evil. It's just human nature to create chaos. He also admits that he often doesn't feel like the good guy because he knows that his side also commits atrocities in the name of keeping peace. In my opinion, the message of this story is one of, if not the best story and character arc I have ever seen in a superhero movie. But I'm sure you know where this is headed. They fucked it! They absolutely fucked it! Yeah, so apparently Ares is real, and he's a motherfucking twist villain, baby! It's the general guy from before who was funding them or something, and he was Ares all along. So forget whatever Steve said earlier about humanity being naturally chaotic. No, it was just Ares the whole time, and Diana was right, even though she was painted as crazy throughout the entire movie. And then we get a CGI fight scene and... Arrgh! Oh,
Yeah.
really?
He is Ares. Or Ares is still
Really? That,
Ares. It's
you know,
Ares.
I was holding out hope that that was a joke or something. But,
Ares.
really?
Not a joke.
I am the reason Ares.
They have such a good movie and then they screw it up at the last.
That, dude, that hurts so much. Because that was that's literally one of the best arcs I've ever seen in any movie ever. Someone who's optimistic about humanity learning how bad humanity is and that neither side is correct, right? What the fuck? It's so disappointing. They were on the verge of greatness. They were this close. As much as I love the first 2 hours of this movie, the last 30 minutes fucks it up so terribly that I can't put it any higher than this. So I had gotten onto the narrative that the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League fixed many of the problems that the original Justice League had, but I still expected the movie to be just okay. So I was surprised by how actually good the Snyder cut was. The Snyder Cut fixed most of the problems that I personally had with the original. Gone are the boring exposition scenes where Alfred explains the backstory of the Flash and Cyborg, and in their place are scenes that actually flesh out the new characters. I feel that Cyborg gains the most from the new exposition, as the new scenes make you understand his story and make you care for him. Steppenwolf also gains a lot from the new scenes, because in the original, Steppenwolf was extremely generic and mysterious. The Snyder Cut makes him the servant of Darkseid and establishes his motivations for wanting to destroy Earth. One could compare Steppenwolf to Ronan the Accuser from Guardians of the Galaxy, as Steppenwolf is the servant of Darkseid, just as Ronan is the servant of Thanos. But in the end, Steppenwolf still isn't a very good villain. Because yeah, we know his motivations and all, but just like Ronan, he's still a very generic villain that we don't know much about. The 4-hour runtime also allows for extended action sequences which very much enhance the experience. And my favorite part about Zack Snyder's cut is what it takes out. All of the stupid Joss Whedon scenes that either killed the tone or just told us instead of showing. For those of you who didn't know, Zack Snyder was the original director for Justice League, and he had most of the filming done before his daughter died. And from what I understand, losing a child is one of the worst pains anyone could ever experience, so Snyder needed to take the time off to mourn. But because Warner Brothers wanted to get the movie out in time, they hired Joss Whedon to come in and take over the project, and he managed to fuck it all up. Whedon changed a lot of the story, filmed a few extra scenes, and compiled a mess that was significantly worse than what Snyder intended. The Snyder Cut of Justice League takes out all of those terrible Whedon scenes. For example, the original Justice League starts with a phone video of kids talking to CGI lip Superman, and then a scene where Batman is talking to a criminal about how Superman is dead. Both of these scenes are taken out in the Snyder Cut and replaced by an actually creative rendition of Superman's death at the end of Batman v Superman, and how his death was figuratively heard around the world. The Snyder Cut also gets rid of the entire subplot about the Russian family trying to escape and just makes the city abandoned. Joss Whedon was the reason we had the Russian family subplot rather than development for Cyborg. Overall, the Snyder Cut improves on literally every aspect of the original, and it's a shame that because of Warner Brothers' greed, we ended up with the shit film instead of this actually good film in 2017. Birds of Prey is another one of the DCEU movies that I hadn't seen until this marathon, and going into it, I had some conflicting expectations. I had heard from my brother that Birds of Prey was really good and one of the best DCEU movies, but I had also heard from Hayden that it was very mid, but no one ever told me it was bad, so that's a good sign, right? Well, the first half of Birds of Prey was terrible. The story is constantly shifting between times, and it's not like these times are very far apart. We're constantly jumping between scenes over the course of only 2 days, so I was confused as to when we were at this specific time. But once the time skipping stopped and the story actually began to progress, the movie got a whole lot better. Margot Robbie is enjoyable as always, and most of the supporting cast do really well in their roles, especially towards the end of the film when they finally all come together. It's the end of the film that really shines the brightest here, and it's carried by the absolutely incredible action. The funhouse fight scene is by far the greatest fight scene in the DCEU. When I was watching it, I started to focus on how the background was never empty. In almost every shot, there was one of the other women in the back taking on more enemies, so the funhouse felt very alive. And also, who thought of having a massive fight scene in a funhouse? It's incredible! It's so perfect for a movie about Harley Quinn, and watching the characters maneuver around it is very fun. And speaking of fun, Ewan McGregor is absolutely killing it as Black Mask. Unfortunately, his motivations are kind of terrible, and he's kind of generically evil, but Ewan McGregor gives so much life to the character that I couldn't not smile whenever he was on screen. And I absolutely cannot get over his death, being both shocking and hilarious.
Alright, that one was nice. Oh god, you saw the guts and everything.
Yeah, I knew that was coming and it still got me.
That was nice, that was nice.
Oh my god, that was... But while this movie does have some fun aspects to it, it's not enough to cover up the absolutely messy story. I can praise the action and the characters as much as I want, but the story is so unbelievably messy, especially towards the beginning, that it brings the film down.
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to who, Ben? Fucking Aquaman!
Aquaman is an absolutely beautiful movie that unfortunately suffers from the laziest storytelling in the DCEU, but we will get to that in a bit. First, I need to say how absolutely stunning this movie looks. It easily has the best colors and visuals of any DCEU movie, and it shocked me how beautiful many of the set pieces were. Like, compare the colors of Aquaman to that of Man of Steel. Do you see the huge difference? Also, I can't really explain why, but I really like Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and I'm happy that the DCEU Aquaman doesn't look at all like the classic Aquaman. It's nice that they decided to cast a Hawaiian actor rather than some generic blonde white guy, and even though he's not white, he could still rock that classic golden green suit. And not only is Jason Momoa great, but this movie stars Willem Dafoe, who no matter what he stars in, always manages to bring some life to the movie. The two villains of Aquaman are not at all generic. Both Black Manta and King Orm have great and reasonable motivations, and both have very distinct personalities. But despite the great actors and cool visuals, this movie unfortunately has the laziest storytelling I have seen since The Rise of Skywalker. Aquaman is a quest movie, where the main characters are given a MacGuffin and sent on a quest to find the next MacGuffin, which then gives them a clue to the next MacGuffin, and you see where I'm going. And making a movie where your characters are constantly going from place to place is very convenient, as it means you don't have to spend any time developing your world. I ask you to find any location in Aquaman that the characters spend more than 10 minutes in. They move from place to place to place and never spend any time developing these interesting worlds because they just need to keep moving. And because the characters are always doing something, we aren't given any time to develop those characters. The only character that actually gets development is Aquaman. Not Amber Heard, not Willem Dafoe, not King Orm, only Aquaman. Also, fuck Amber Heard and her character. Mera is easily the worst character in this movie. Oh yeah, and remember when I mentioned that this movie had incredible colors and set pieces? Well, it does, but we never get to spend any time exploring those beautiful worlds because we just need to keep moving. For example, look at this location. Look how absolutely stunning it is. Okay, now it's gone. We'll never see it again. Or what about the small village in Italy? Oh, there's a cool fight scene here. Oh wait, we're leaving now? And never coming back? Okay, that's cool. Look how marvelous this city looks. oh, okay, we're gone and never coming back. You see what I mean? There are so many cool locations that we're just in for a few minutes and then just move on. It's very disappointing.
I will find him, Lara.
I will find him!
Man of Steel was the first movie in the DCEU. It was back in 2013 when they didn't even intend to have an extended universe. The extended universe bit came a little later on when they decided to make Batman v Superman, and we'll get to that later. Also, thank the Lord they didn't decide to put Green Lantern into the DCEU, because I really did not want to watch that film. But at the time when it first came out, I remember really liking Man of Steel, and so did everyone else. It was a decently well-received movie. And if you think about the year it came out, its competition from Marvel was Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World, so you can see why it was received so well. But today, I rarely hear people talk about Man of Steel because by today's standards, it's a fairly mediocre film. The DCEU has made some terrible films since then, but then recently they've also put out some incredible ones. So Man of Steel just falls into that realm of mediocrity that doesn't get talked about as much. Man of Steel didn't really invoke any emotion in me. I didn't really have much connection to Superman, and I never found myself feeling much while watching the film. And the movie didn't really make me think or leave me asking bigger questions. And some character motivations just don't make sense, especially Jonathan Kent, who would rather have the kids on the bus die than have Clark show his powers?
Don't go under the overpass, Hank!
It would be funny if he was the only one that lived and everyone else died.
Why wouldn't Jonathan is so dumb?
He just fucking stands there.
Jonathan Kent is the dumbest man on the planet.
It would be funny if they showed him getting hit by like a truck or something instead of just fading into the thing.
He just gets fucking squished.
Also, why can't Zod just terraform Mars or something? Why do they need to terraform a planet with life already on it if they're just going to kill all the life?
The foundation has to be built on something. Even your father recognized that.
Why though? Why? Does it have to be built on something if you're just going to destroy all the buildings on the planet?
Can you be a part of?
But one thing I have to give Man of Steel credit for is that this movie is fucking hilarious. My friends and I were having an absolute riot watching this film.
Mine.
What?
What are you talking about?
The penis mods, the penis mods.
Alex symbols, it's brilliant.
He's just on fire.
He's on fire. Oh my god! Someone definitely died in that explosion.
What about all the people inside the buildings?
Not the seer!
Military, bro, they don't care.
The Sears? No, no, not the Sears. What the?
He's gonna shit in the machine.
The problem is that it's not trying to be funny, it's trying to be serious. So my friends and I were laughing at the movie and not with it. And I have to acknowledge that the final 40 minutes of this movie are just Zod and Superman smashing through buildings. It indeed happens that often. No, the IHOP!
Josh, no!
Oh my god.
Stop running! Run perpendicular! Oh no, it's no, the more buildings, dude.
Okay.
Yo, LexCorp. Holy, what the fuck? No.
There goes LexCorp.
Superman, try not to destroy a city challenge level impossible. Holy shit!
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yep.
Lady, you are evil!
Suicide Squad is an absolutely terrible movie that I get so much ironic enjoyment out of. to the point where it has ended up being the DCEU movie I have probably seen the most times. The movie is so comically bad that it is never a pain to sit through. Anything from Will Smith's shitty lines,
Lady, you are evil!
to Killer Croc's stupid ass accent, to fucking Morbius over here with damage just written on his forehead.
Or how are we gonna know he's damaged if it's not written?
Damage. Oh yeah.
Just damage on his forehead.
And you know what's horrible? In about 10 years, there's gonna be people like, guys, we need to appreciate his Joker.
It's deep, bro. It's so deep. Every single character except for one is written terribly, and I will give you a second to guess which character is the good one. Have you guessed? It's Diablo. He's the only character written with deep trauma and believable actions based off that trauma. Diablo is responsible for the death of his family, and because of this, he refuses to use his powers to stop himself from hurting anyone else. And then his sacrifice at the end in order to save his new family is an actually great arc that I'm shocked made it into this total mess of a film. Every other character has such a messy backstory that they didn't even bother giving time to flesh out, and in the rare case that they are given a backstory, it doesn't make any sense.
Daddy, please.
Zoe, move!
Why would the...
Please, Daddy, don't do it.
Why would the... Why is she like, no, don't kill Batman, I love Batman. What if, like, instead, Batman, like, because Batman is dark, right? What if he takes the daughter and hangs her over the roof of a building? One thing I like to say is that the reason the characters in the newer movie are so much better is because every character has trauma that gets explored in the film. What trauma do the characters in Suicide Squad have? Well, Diablo accidentally killed his entire family, Harley Quinn was tortured by Morbius, and that's it. And there's so much I want to say about Morbius. Joker. He seems like he was written by someone who seriously misunderstands the character and just think that Joker is crazy and he's wild and he's the Joker, baby. And Jared Leto is not helping with this portrayal, especially with the stories about him harassing people on set in the name of method acting, just for his performance to be absolutely atrocious. And before I move on, I want to talk about the soundtrack because this is by far the worst on-the-nose soundtrack I've ever heard. You remember in Guardians of the Galaxy when James Gunn chose somewhat popular songs from the 80s that not only fit the tone of the scene, but also fits the narrative that Peter Quill was taken from the Earth in the 80s? Well, Suicide Squad has none of that. They just take insanely popular songs from all different generations and put them into scenes where they don't fit the tone at all. And they play Without Me because he says, guess who's back? And they're getting back into action. All they did was look at the name of the song or one line, and if it fit, then they used it. For example, they're getting back into action, and Without Me by Eminem says, guess who's back? They are flying in the sky, so they play the song Spirit in the Sky. They play Dirty Deeds by AC/DC because Captain Boomerang is doing dirty deeds. You know what? Actually, I like Dirty Deeds in this scene. It's basically the only song in this movie that fits the tone.
Do any of you know billionaire Bruce Wayne?
No, none of us do. And he wouldn't want to lend us money anyway, I hear.
Justice League is essentially the same movie as Suicide Squad, but with heroes instead of villains. I tried so hard to find a reason to like this movie more than Suicide Squad, but Justice League had nothing in its favor. I wanted so much to like this movie, but there is just nothing that you can get out of this movie that you can't already get from watching Suicide Squad. If you boil these two films down to their core, you basically have the same exact movie. Both movies introduce way too many characters that don't get nearly enough development. Both movies have generic evil villains with terrible motivations, and both basically have the same story structure. And to top it all off, both movies also have a really shitty actor. Justice League has Amber Heard, and Suicide Squad has Jared Leto. But between the two, I would much prefer Morbius. And the worst part is, Justice League decides that they need to bring back Superman from the dead, and I don't even think I need to explain why bringing back a character from the dead is a bad idea and bad practice. Suicide Squad has no such contrivance, so it's for that reason I had to say that Justice League was worse. And trust me, I tried so hard to like Justice League, but it was giving me nothing. None of the new characters were given explored backstories, and in the rare glimpses that we got, it was just exposition from Alfred or Bruce.
Young Barry always protested his father's innocence, but he was 9 and nobody listened to him. We have somebody at the
Exposition, exposition, exposition. Just show us Barry Allen and imply it there.
Perhaps the writers have never heard of a little thing called show, don't tell, because boring exposition is essentially all we got in terms of backstory for the 3 new heroes. And I would have preferred if they didn't say anything about Aquaman. They should have just kept him mysterious and then explored his story more in his future film a year later. That's what James Gunn did with the Peacemaker, and we saw how incredible that turned out. Justice League just disappointed me with how little we got from the new characters, especially Cyborg, as I grew up on Teen Titans and was extremely excited to see Cyborg, just for him to look like this.
It looks awful.
It looks terrible.
Nope. Honestly, I don't even blame him for feeling like bad about himself. Man, he looks horrible.
I can see.
Your boyfriend killed himself.
Shockingly, before this marathon, I hadn't seen the first Wonder Woman yet, but I had seen this abomination of a film. That's probably why I was so shocked by how good Wonder Woman was, until the end. It's so crazy to me how Patty Jenkins managed to make both of these movies, one being one of the best superhero movies ever, until it isn't, and the other being one of the worst superhero movies ever. Honestly, I think that Wonder Woman being as good as it was just a fluke. Patty Jenkins accidentally made a good movie, but then she fucked it up with Ares at the end. And then she went on to make this disaster. Wonder Woman 1984 is the dumbest superhero movie I have ever seen, filled with plot holes the size of the Grand Canyon, and the only reason that it isn't last on this list is because I absolutely adore Pedro Pascal and everything he's in. Max Lord, ironically, is one of the best DCEU villains. Better than Black Mask, better than Zod, better than Starro the Conqueror. He's somehow better than most characters in this universe, but even he isn't without his flaws. His emotional reconciliation with his son at the end of the film would have been more impactful if we had spent more time on their relationship, as we only get 2 scenes where they interacted, which granted is better than none, but I just feel like it could have been more. Other than that, Max Lord is an incredible villain, and the acting from Pedro Pascal absolutely sells this character and gives him so much life. When I was talking about Mark Strong playing Dr. Sivana, this is what I meant by giving your character a personality. Pedro Pascal takes the shit script he was given and makes something incredible out of it. But like I said, the script is shit, and everyone in this movie sucks. The dialogue is atrocious, especially the scene in the beginning where Diana and Barbara go get lunch.
She served in World War One.
Wow. She's a World War One veteran? Oh
wow, you're so funny.
Wow. I mean, no one's made me laugh like
You're
this
so
in such
funny,
a long
Diana.
time.
You're so pretty. I wish I was like you.
Because you just seem like the kind of person who's like always out. Like people are asking you to go out all the time.
I admire
you live
you,
out.
Diana.
You're just out. You just seem like you'd be really popular. So personable.
You're so personable.
popular.
Yeah.
I'm
They're
actually
just-
focusing on the dialogue this time, and now it's I never focused on the dialogue before.
You envy me? Oh, dude.
Oh my gosh.
People think I'm weird. Oh, they talk behind my back. This is so bad. This is not how humans talk. It's like they're just reading off that list on SparkNotes that describes each character. And when Barbara becomes hot and everything, people start mega simping for her. Like, her wish was to be like Diana, and yeah, Diana got comments about looking good, I guess, but never to the extreme extent that Barbara gets. Also, this movie does a pretty bad job at enforcing the rules of the Magic Stone MacGuffin. For example, why is Barbara allowed to have 2 wishes? Like, I guess if Max Lord is the stone, then he gets to decide the rules, right? Wait, so if he gets to decide the rules, then why does everyone still have consequences? Couldn't he just get rid of the consequences if he wanted to? And also, if he could grant Barbara a second wish, then why couldn't he grant that one employee a second wish when he needed that employee to wish for him? There are so many plot holes with this stone, and I haven't even mentioned the thing with Steve coming back. One, it's creepy as fuck, stealing a guy's consciousness to bring your boyfriend back. And two, as I mentioned before with Justice League, I hate it when movies bring characters back to life. Also, the lasso of truth in this movie seems to have unlimited powers, because now not only can it make people have visions for some reason, but it can also somehow intercept the broadcast that Max Lord is transmitting across the world and tell her message instead? What? The lasso of truth is like some super anime weapon that can do whatever the plot needs it to. And I loathe the fight scene between Wonder Woman and Cheetah. First of all, Cheetah looks terrible. And worse, she doesn't even look like a cheetah. My girlfriend in veterinary school claims that while the spots look like a cheetah, the color is completely off and looks much more like a snow leopard. Also, the gold armor that Diana gets is extremely impractical, especially against someone like Cheetah. And to top it all off, why does the electricity not hurt Diana? Barbara's wish was to have the same powers as Diana, right? So she should be just as strong as her, right? So why does the electricity kill Barbara but not Diana? Is it because of Diana's armor? You know, the armor that's made of a highly conductive metal and isn't even covering her head? Yeah, sure. It's the armor that's protecting her. The plot armor. And the worst part is, Barbara's not even dead. She's just not dead. Why? How does, like, God, this movie is terrible. But somehow it's not the worst.
Save Martha! Why did you say that name?
Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition is one of the most boring and terrible films I have ever had the displeasure of watching. Yeah, that's right. I said Ultimate Edition. It's the only thing they had on HBO Max, and it's 30 minutes longer than the original. Yes, the version I watched was 3 excruciating hours long. And it's not like they increased the length of the fight at the end. No, they increased the length of the boring-ass exposition. Batman v Superman spends the first 2 hours of the film following both Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent as they explore 2 leads that both lead them to Lex Luthor and each other. I was extremely bored because I have no connection to either of these characters, especially Batman, who I just met and have no clue as to who this guy is. Finally, when they fight, we get the worst moment in all of the DCEU.
Save Martha!
Where did you say that name? It's his mother's name. God, this scene is so bad. Why couldn't Superman have just said, "Save my mother"? And then Batman would have realized that the man he is about to kill is not just an alien, but a human as well. Oh right, yeah, because Batman has no problem killing people, because this is a much darker version of Batman. And then Lex Luthor creates a big generic boss battle, and oh yeah, Wonder Woman is there too, and they absolutely abuse her theme song.
God, I fucking hate women.
Bro, this is like supposed to be badass, but they barely built up Diana at all.
Here, let me look him up.
Uh-oh.
Stop playing the song! Oh my god.
Oh my god, they do not know how to do this with Wonder Woman. I cannot express to you how unbelievably boring this movie was.
This movie's still over.
It's still not over. We got 20 minutes left. Even during the namesake fight between Superman and Batman, I couldn't keep my eyes on the screen because I was so incredibly bored. And being boring is worse than just being bad. It's so obvious why this movie turned out the way it did, because if you look into its production, they were so blatantly trying to do whatever Marvel did. They canceled the Batman origin movie that they were planning in 2015 in order to rush out Batman v Superman to come out at the same time as Captain America Civil War, but with a clear misunderstanding of what makes Civil War one of the best superhero movies of all time. Captain America and Iron Man both have half a dozen movies of development before this, so we fully understand their characters and motivations, and the same cannot be said for Batman v Superman. The conflict between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark has no clear answer. Do we trust the government because we are too powerful and we need to surrender our control? Or do we act as vigilantes because the government is often blind and apathetic to many problems? The movie doesn't give an answer to this dilemma, and the audience is left to think about their own views and decide for themselves what's the right choice. Batman v Superman gives no dilemma. The motivations of both characters is that the other is killing people and they are both correct. Also, there's no victory at the end of Civil War. It's hard to say that anyone wins at the end of the movie, and that's what makes it so good. Batman v Superman ends exactly how you would expect it to. The two characters who just hated each other team up and defeat generic evil bad guy. And finally, Civil War's villain is Zemo. I don't even think I have to explain why Zemo is better than Lex Luthor. Figure it out for yourself. Now, I realize that Black Adam is coming out in October and Shazam 2 is coming out in December, so when that time comes, this list will already be outdated. So that's why once I see those two movies, I'll be making a follow-up video to this one, basically saying where I would put those in between each movie on this list. And not only that, I also created a Letterboxd account, so you could go follow me on there, and I have this DCEU list. I'm going to link that in the description, and once those movies come out, I'll add those to that list, and you can get a more visual representation instead of just trying to remember what numbers I put these at. Letterboxd is really the account that I'm going to try and move to for lists like this, and I'm excited for what my movie reviewing future is going to be like, because I'm really getting into this. One more thing I should mention is you should probably go follow me on Instagram, of course, Jacob Conklin YT. I post updates on my projects occasionally. I don't know if you want to go check that out or something. I was posting a few times leading up to this release. Maybe if you wanted to see my progress or how the video editing process goes, you could follow me there. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to, like it, subscribe, all the usual stuff. With that being said, that's all for today. I will see you guys next time I see you. Have a good night.
Sir, you have 2 missed parking tickets.